My brother and I are standing on a dusty path in the heart of West Africa, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, and we're absolutely befuddled as to which way to go. We hold our bicycles by the handlebars and look back and forth. And it occurs to me that it's not unusual for me myself to get myself in a bind by improvising, but my brother usually starts with a clear, well-thought-out plan. Did I mention that we're identical twins? When people hear that, they often ask, "How identical are you?" Well, the answer is, in ways that are obvious and superficial, pretty darn identical. But he's the type A twin. When we were babies, I was content to crawl along on my belly indefinitely, while he came out with a clearly thought out workout plan so he could learn to walk as quickly as possible. When we shared a room, he folded his underwear while I dumped my clothes out on the floor so I could find things more easily. When we ran our first marathon together, he came in under our goal time while I undertrained and brought up the rear. He has enough advanced degrees for both of us. But when it comes to our view of the world, what we hold sacred, our hopes for the planet, we're gloriously alike. And we've always looked for opportunities in our adult lives to get together and have experiences which would become reference points in our common culture, which is how I happened to be visiting him at the tail end of his stint in the Peace Corps in Burkina Faso. And of all the time we spent together on that trip, that one magical afternoon stands out in our common memory. After he was done his workday at the high school in Koudougou, we hopped on bicycles and pedaled north, out of town, past the big Catholic church, past herds of sheep and goats who were nibbling the green grass that had popped up after the first rains a few days before. And a couple of kilometers out, we took a right between two spreading baobab trees and continued to zigzag down the path across the savanna grasslands, past mud-walled family compounds, past farmers in conical hats working the soil with broad hoes, preparing for planting in the next few days. And that afternoon took on the timelessness of childhood. But it was a timelessness of childhood with the additional factor of alcoholic beverages. Because each hamlet we passed through, some generous soul would wave us in under a thatched roof to enjoy a calabash of dolo, homemade millet beer. And after several such visits, we noticed that the sun was getting alarmingly close to setting, and the timelessness evaporated because we realized with all those calabashes of liquid hospitality and all the turns we had taken on our bicycles, we had no idea how to get back to my brother's house in Koudougou. So at the edge of the next village, we asked if there was a French speaker nearby, and we were led to the house of the chef du village, sort of a mayor. We were welcomed into the relative cool of the living room, and we sat down around a long, low table. They offered us tea. We were relieved it wasn't millet beer. And then as we began to sip, they asked us questions about where we were from. The United States, was it a neighboring country to France? It's important that you understand that these were men who had built their own houses, grew all their own food under challenging circumstances, raised their own livestock, lived in a complex cosmology that connected them to the ancestors and those around them and those to come. They just didn't know international geography. It also bears pointing out that it was my brother and I who were lost. They knew exactly where they were. So my brother crouched down next to the table and began to move the metal teapot and the glass teacups to give a sense of scale. He said, "Here we are, and if you cross the Sahel and cross the Sahara, you'll get to the edge of the Mediterranean." Now he gestured across the table. "If you cross the Mediterranean, you get to France, and then hang a left and travel twice as far as you've already traveled. You get to where we live in the United States." The two men smiled and shook their heads in confusion. And then the chef du village said, so softly we could barely hear, "Que Dieu est grand." God is great. Well, a few days later, I traveled home by the route my brother had sketched out. But that simple phrase has stayed with both of us across all the long years since. Que Dieu est grand. God is great. No matter how many times we've heard similar words come from the mouths of true believers of all stripes with dangerous certainty, we remember that humble expression of awe at the grandeur of creation. And for us, it's like a talisman against human arrogance. And now, when my brother and I get together on a mountaintop or in a canoe at dawn as the first rays of sunlight are cutting through the mist, one of us is bound to turn to the other and whisper, "Que Dieu est grand." And our smiles are identical.